Alexander Reid stared at the DNA results in disbelief, his hands trembling as the truth crashed over him like a tidal wave. The homeless twin girls he'd impulsively purchased from their stepmother were his biological daughters, children he never knew existed. The 38-year-old tech billionaire collapsed into his leather chair, the world spinning around him as 13 years of mourning his supposedly stillborn child shattered into a new reality. Not only had his baby lived, but there had been two of them, and they had spent their lives in poverty while he amassed billions. "Sir, the girls are waiting in the garden," his assistant said softly from the doorway, unaware that her employer's entire existence had just imploded. Alexander couldn't breathe, couldn't think. How would he tell these traumatized 12-year-olds that he was their father? That their mother, his college sweetheart Eliza, had died believing their baby had never drawn breath? That someone, his former father-in-law he suspected with growing rage, had stolen them at birth and sold them into a life of hardship while he grieved alone? He had exactly one chance to get this right, or he might lose his daughters forever. Just when he'd found them. The twins, Lily and Rose, sat nervously on the stone bench beneath the cherry blossoms, their second-hand clothes hanging loosely on their thin frames. They'd been shocked when the tall man with kind eyes had approached them outside the shelter last week, offering their stepmother an obscene amount of money to relinquish custody. Their stepmother had accepted without hesitation, pocketing the cash and walking away without a backward glance. The girls didn't understand why this wealthy stranger wanted them. Was it charity? Pity? Something worse? They'd spent the past week in luxurious but bewildering isolation, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "You have his eyes," Alexander said as he approached, his voice catching. The girls stiffened, exchanging confused glances. "My father's eyes. Your grandfather's." He knelt before them, his expensive suit touching the garden path. "I don't know how to say this, so I'll just say it. I'm your biological father, and I had no idea you existed until today." Lily, the more outspoken twin, narrowed her eyes. "That's impossible. Our mother told us our father abandoned her when she got pregnant. Then she died when we were 3. Your mother's name was Eliza Harmon. We met at Stanford. She had a small birthmark shaped like a crescent moon behind her left ear. She loved sunflowers and hated cilantro. And she was told our baby, you, died during childbirth, while I was trapped in a blizzard in Colorado, unable to reach the hospital." Alexander pulled out his phone, showing them a photo of a young woman with their same heart-shaped face and auburn hair. "I never abandoned her. I never abandoned you. I just didn't know you were alive." Rose, always the more sensitive twin, reached out hesitantly to touch the screen. "That's her. That's the woman in the photo our stepmother burned." Her voice trembled. "But if you're telling the truth, how did we end up with our stepmother? And why did you buy us like property?" Alexander's jaw tightened. "I didn't know you were my daughters when I saw you outside that shelter. I just knew I couldn't leave 2 children with a woman who was clearly neglecting them. As for how you ended up with her," he paused, his expression darkening, "that's what I intend to find out. Someone stole you from the hospital and falsified death records. And I think I know who." The revelation hung in the air between them, a fragile bridge of truth spanning 13 years of deception. None of them noticed the shadow that passed by the garden wall, or the figure that slipped away into the gathering dusk, phone already pressed to ear. 3 weeks later, the twins had settled into a cautious routine in Alexander's sprawling Pacific Heights mansion. DNA tests had confirmed what Alexander already knew in his heart. These were his daughters, his flesh and blood. The girls remained wary, accepting his generosity but keeping emotional distance. They shared a suite of rooms with a view of the Golden Gate Bridge, attended therapy sessions, and slowly gained weight on regular meals. Alexander gave them space while quietly launching an investigation that consumed his every free moment. "We found her," his head of security announced one evening, placing a file on Alexander's desk. "Meredith Winters, the woman who claimed to be their stepmother. She's actually their maternal aunt, Eliza's half-sister. She's been living under an assumed name." Alexander flipped through the file, his expression hardening. "And my former father-in-law?" "Gerald Harmon died 3 years ago," Heart attack. But we found this in his safety deposit box. The security chief handed over a sealed envelope addressed to Alexander in familiar handwriting. With trembling fingers, Ale, life, a new family? Alexander had asked himself the same question countless times. Eliza never stopped looking for you, he said softly. The investigator found her search history, her correspondence with private detectives. She never believed you were dead. She just couldn't prove it, and no one would believe her. They all thought it was her grief talking. He swallowed hard. She never remarried, never had other children. She's been waiting all this time, just like I was. As the plane soared over the Pacific, Alexander showed the twins photos of the oceanfront cottage he'd purchased in New Zealand. It's just down the beach from where she lives, he explained. We'll take it slow. I'll approach her first, prepare her. This will be a shock for her, too. Rose leaned against her father's shoulder, exhaustion finally claiming her. Lily remained vigilant, still not entirely trusting that their newfound security wouldn't be snatched away. Alexander put his arms around both his daughters, marveling at how quickly they had become the center of his world. When we land, he promised, our new life begins. No more looking over our shoulders. No more fighting ghosts from the past. Just us, together, the way it always should have been. 3 days later, Alexander stood on the beach at sunrise, watching a slender woman with auburn hair streaked with silver walking along the shore. His heart pounded as he recognized the graceful way she moved, unchanged after all these years. When she looked up and saw him, she froze, her hand flying to her mouth. "Alexander?" she called, her voice carried on the wind. He nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. They moved toward each other slowly, then with increasing urgency until they were running across the sand. When they collided, 13 years of separation dissolved in an embrace that felt like coming home. "I found them," he whispered against her hair. "I found our girls." Eliza pulled back, her face transformed by hope and disbelief. "They're alive? My babies are alive?" "They're not babies anymore," he said with a smile. "They're 12 years old, brilliant and beautiful and so much like you. And they're waiting to meet you, just up there." He pointed toward the cottage where the twins stood on the deck, watching the reunion unfold. Eliza's legs gave way beneath her, and Alexander caught her, holding her steady as she had once held him. Together they walked up the beach toward their daughters, toward the future they had all been denied for too long. 1 year later, the Reid family celebrated the twins' 13th birthday in their New Zealand home. The past 12 months had been filled with healing, learning, and rebuilding. Eliza had struggled with guilt and grief for the years lost, while Alexander had battled his own demons, the rage at what had been stolen from them, the fear that he wasn't the father his daughters deserved. The twins had their own adjustments. Rose learning to trust that this new family wouldn't disappear. Lily allowing herself to be vulnerable after years of being her sister's protector. They weren't perfect. They argued and misunderstood each other. They made mistakes, but they were family, bound not just by blood, but by choice, by the conscious decision each day to stay, to try, to love. As they gathered around the birthday cake, Alexander looked at his daughters. Healthier now, their faces filled out, their eyes brighter. And at Eliza, who had found her way back from the darkness that had claimed so many years of her life. He thought about the journey that had brought them here. From loss to discovery, from pain to healing, from separation to unity. "Make a wish," Eliza told the twins as they prepared to blow out their candles. Lily and Rose exchanged glances, then closed their eyes and blew together, plunging the room into momentary darkness before Alexander flipped on the lights. "What did you wish for?" he asked, knowing they wouldn't tell him. Rose smiled mysteriously. "If we say it out loud, it won't come true." Later that night, after the girls had gone to bed, Alexander and Eliza sat on the deck overlooking the ocean, hands intertwined as they had been so often in the past year. "I never thought I could be this happy again," Eliza confessed. "After I lost you, lost the babies. I thought that was it for me. That life would just be enduring from one day to the next." Alexander squeezed her hand. "I know, I felt the same way. Building the company, the foundation, it was just a way to fill the void." He paused, looking out at the moonlight on the water. Do you ever think about going back? To our old lives? Eliza shook her head. This is our life now, here, together, the four of us against the world. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Though I do miss your mother's cooking. Alexander laughed. She's threatening to visit again next month. Says she needs to make sure her granddaughters aren't forgetting their Chinese heritage. Good, Eliza said. Family should be together. In the quiet that followed, Alexander thought about the journey that had brought them here. How a chance encounter outside a homeless shelter had led to the restoration of his family. How the greatest loss of his life had transformed into his greatest blessing. He thought about the twins, sleeping peacefully for perhaps the first time in their young lives, secure in the knowledge that they were loved, wanted, cherished. Some stories don't have happy endings. Some losses can never be recovered. Some wounds never fully heal. But sometimes, if you're very lucky, life gives you a second chance. Not to erase the past, but to build something new from its ashes. Something stronger, more precious for having been so nearly lost. If this story of loss and redemption has touched your heart, remember that families come in all forms, created not just by blood, but by love and choice. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that, even in our darkest moments, hope remains. Because sometimes the things we think we've lost forever are just waiting to be found.